In the heartland of America, where rolling fields stretch under vast silent skies, an eerie legend lurks in the shadows of Kentucky's rural landscape. On a humid night in August 1955, the tranquil town of Hopkinsville was shaken to its core. Ordinary families found themselves face to face with the extraordinary, as beings not of this world descended upon their farmhouse. What they experienced would become one of the most chilling and controversial encounters in the annals of unexplained. Join us as we dive in and explore where the line between reality and nightmare blurs, and the unknown reaches out from the darkness. In the Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter. Hello everyone, and welcome to Wicked Encounters, where we explore just what goes bump in the night. I'm your host, Allie, and today we're taking a peek at another tale involving one family's harrowing ordeal with creatures from the night. The Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter is regarded as one of the most significant and well-documented cases in UFO history. On the night of August 21st, 1955, the Suttons, a large extended farm family, had one of the most detailed accounts of an alien close encounter on record. At around 7 p.m. on a hot Sunday evening, the Suttons' family friend Billy Ray Taylor, who was visiting from Pennsylvania with his wife, went out to fetch water from the backyard well when he saw a silvery object in the sky. He described it as real bright with an exhaust all the colors of the rainbow. It came silently towards the house, passed over it, stopped in the air, and then suddenly dropped straight to the ground. Taylor ran back to the house to tell the others what he had seen. In the home, there was the 50-year-old matriarch of the Sutton household, widow Glennie Langford, her sons Elmer Lucky Sutton, and John Carly J.C. Sutton, along with their wives Vera and Aline, along with Aline's brother O.P. Baker and a gaggle of children. None of them believed Taylor's story of a UFO over the house, and who could blame them? The Suttons were a family that lived in an unpainted 3-bedroom home without running water, TV, telephones, radio, or books. They believed it was more than likely a meteor, or maybe a shooting star. The idea of a UFO never crossed their minds. And why would it? They were just a farming family who lived out in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. But their laughter wouldn't last long. An hour later, the Suttons' family dog wouldn't stop barking. An incessant, high-alert bark of a canine in distress. Lucky and Billy Ray went out to see what had made the poor thing so upset when they saw a strange glow. And coming from the middle of that glow, a small, humanoid creature that was heading towards them. The creature stood at roughly 3.5 feet tall, with an oversized, almost perfectly round head, with large, pointy ears that stuck straight up. Its arms reached almost to the ground with hands bearing talons on each digit. Its eyes were massive and glowed with a yellowish light, while its body had an eerie shimmer to it, seeming to be made of a silver metal. Now being true-blooded rural Americans, the two men ran back inside where they grabbed a 12-gauge shotgun and a .22 rifle before heading right back outside, guns drawn. Apparently, raising one's upper limbs in the air is the universal sign for surrender, as the little guy held its hands up as it saw the guns being pointed directly at it. It then did a flip and ran off into the darkness. Their ordeal was far from over, as soon after, the men saw another of the goblins appear in one of the side windows of the house, and fired through the window screen. The bullets did nothing. It seemed like whatever these creatures were, they were impervious to bullets. It at least caused the thing to flip like the other one did and then disappear. The family was finding the little men all around the house, with Glennie spotting one as it approached the front door, and Taylor spotted another one on the roof. Things soon escalated when Taylor stepped outside under a small overhanging roof, and those still in the house behind him saw a tiny clawed hand reach down and touch his hair. The group pulled Taylor back in, while Lucky shot above the overhang where he saw another one in a nearby tree and shot at that one as well. The one in the trees almost seemed to float down to the ground below before it then scurried into the woods. For hours, the Suttons remained in their home, listening for movement as they'd occasionally hear scratches on the roof above. Finally, at 11 o'clock p.m., the entire group made a break for the cars and sped off to the nearby Hopkinsville police station. They arrived in hysterics, the police needing to have them calm down to even get a basic understanding of what they were saying. Finally, the families were able to tell the police how their home was under siege by small creatures that they had been fighting for nearly 4 hours now. The Suttons weren't the kind of people to ask the police for help, and to have children in tow this late at night was definitely alarming. So the police, for their part, took it rather seriously. The chief called for backup, and then headed to the Suttons' farmhouse with the families to see what was going on. When they arrived, though, there was nothing. No footprints, no flying saucers, but a good amount of gun shells and a broken window screen. There was no evidence to suggest that there was any kind of creature that the Suttons were shooting at. The police began to wonder if perhaps the adults had been drinking heavily, but there was no alcohol on the property either, with Glennie stating that liquor was strictly forbidden in her home. The officers questioned the family members separately, and each one gave the same description of the night's events. After hours of digging up no evidence of little silver men, UFOs, or goblins, the police left, and the family was on their own once more. It was difficult for anyone in the house to fall asleep. Glennie was able to get a nap in until 3:30 a.m., where she was awoken by the sight of one of the goblins on the other side of her bedroom window, gently scratching at it as it peered inside. Glennie woke up Lucky and Taylor, who spent the rest of the night on watch for any signs of the small creatures trying to get in, their guns kept very close by despite how ineffective they were. Just before daybreak, their harrowing ordeal ended as the creatures finally left, never to be seen by the family again. News about the Hopkinsville goblins quickly spread as the little men gained in popularity. The term little green men didn't come until later, after the group was interviewed and had said that they had an encounter with little gray men. The media misheard, and soon articles of little green men became a generic term used for aliens, especially when a few years later, an eastern Kentucky woman reported she had seen a flying saucer and a 6-foot-tall man in green. In the following days, hundreds of curious spectators descended upon the Suttons' home, often ridiculing or laughing at the Suttons, claiming they were frauds or ignorant. The Suttons put up no trespassing signs, to little effect, so they ended up charging an admission for people coming onto their land. It was 50 cents for entering the grounds, $1 for information on what had happened, and $10 for taking pictures. And this went absolutely horribly, as not only were they now being called frauds,
"You're a fake and a fraud,"
but viewed as fortune-seeking hoaxers. As all tales do, the Kelly tale took on a life of its own, growing more elaborate and embellished as the years went on. The number of goblins went from only 3 or 4 that the family had seen to a dozen or more. Their features changed to something a bit more menacing and ghoulish, with funny little outfits. The ordeal did eventually attract the attention of the government and got a spot in Project Blue Book, but documentation suggests that it wasn't really followed up on outside of a simple check-in with Fort Campbell, which was briefly notified of the event. In 1956, the Suttons were approached by ufologist Isabel Davis, whose work was later published by the Center for UFO Studies, a group that was founded by astronomer Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was the Project Blue Book's civilian investigator. Davis had written up a nearly 200-page report that included maps, drawings, documentary records, and studies of similar accounts and interviews from around the world. When it came to the concern of the lack of physical evidence, she concurred that it was difficult to explain, but felt that the other explanations that the Suttons had thrown at them, a hoax, publicity stunt, group hallucinations, they all just didn't make sense. Dr. Hynek himself, though, viewed the whole case as preposterous and an offense to common sense. Harsh words, and ones that were hard to go against, as he was highly regarded for his work with the U.S. Air Force in the UFO community. The Suttons had, in the end, regretted coming forward with their story. They had many UFO fanatics that would come to the farm as previously mentioned, take things, and call them souvenirs. They also were getting tired of being harassed and called liars, which resulted in them leaving 10 days after the ordeal. Glennie, who had always lived in the countryside, had sold the farmhouse and moved into an apartment in town as she felt safer around other people now. The idea of being alone was just too terrifying. After all, what if the small creatures came back? For JC, he wasn't able to hold a job anymore. His mind seemed to be shot from the terror he felt from that night. But if not tiny gray alien beings, what could it have been that basically scarred the family so? Well, while all officials appeared to agree that there was no drinking involved, psychologists Rodney Schmaltz and Scott Lilienfeld, a professor of psychology at Emory University, believe that intoxication could have still played a part in the sightings through a potential secret stash, maybe even drugs. Others, such as Joe Nickel, a member of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, said the family could have misidentified a great horned owl for the tiny green men. Great horned owls are nocturnal, they fly silently, and have yellow eyes. They're also known to aggressively defend their nests, and are incredibly common among the entirety of Kentucky. Meteors had also been sighted around the same time as when Taylor said that he saw something in the sky. And it's possible that just as the family had assumed before they were terrorized, that it could have been a meteor he was misidentifying. So it would have been a combination of a meteor and a pair of great horned owls that were super upset. Another potential explanation that follows the idea that the family was in on it was that since the Taylors and Lucky were carnies, perhaps they had gotten some monkeys and were claiming them to be little aliens out to attack them. This theory doesn't hold up as much in my opinion, since there were no footprints when the police had been on the scene. In fact, the only terrifying thing that the police had encountered there was apparently one police officer had stepped on the family's cat's tail and it cried out. So there was a lot of scurrying about and a lot of spooky hijinks of people wondering what the hell had just happened. But that was it. Other sightings were reported across the country in regards to the goblins, as copycats quickly came out to add their own supposed encounters, even if most of them were easily debunked as fake. A group of teenagers in Evansville reported seeing 10 of the little men in their school's athletic field. They said that when they threw rocks at them, the goblins quickly ran off into the darkness. Another individual, Darwin Johnson, who had previously reported being grabbed and pulled underwater while swimming by the Creature of the Black Lagoon, a movie that had come out a year before he had initially reported his encounter. He changed his story to include that he had seen a flying saucer right before swimming, and that his attacker must have been one of the goblins. No matter where you go, you're always going to find people who need to add their 10 cents to try and capitalize on any bit of publicity, even if it's bad. Like, there are so many sightings of UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to use now, aliens, cryptids, ghosts, and it gets drowned by people who just really love to be those people. The ones that I mean, where it's like, oh, I broke my leg. Oh, well, that's crazy, bro. I broke every single bone in my body and had compound fractures in both my arms all at the same time. You know the ones. They just, they're so annoying. It's so unfortunate since there are a few, granted, very few, but still a few, people who seem to genuinely have things happen to them. If we could have more of them come forward without being jeered at, and fewer people trying to steal whatever limelight they think they can find, then that would be super awesome. The Hopkinsville Goblins had gone on to be the inspiration for Steven Spielberg's unproduced movie Night Skies. It never saw the light of day, but the material developed for it was used in other movies of his, namely Poltergeist, E.T., and Gremlins, all of which went on to be incredibly successful. It's been mentioned in a few different TV series and musicals, and was the inspiration for the Pokemon Sableye, which in my opinion is one of the more useless Pokemon, but I'm also someone who loves having my monsters evolve, and since Sableye doesn't, I didn't get the purpose of catching one outside of filling my Pokedex. Oh, but what if they had it evolve into a type of gray alien? Then I'd be interested in getting one. But I think it's a little too late for that, though. I think they're pretty determined it's going to stay one of those useless, unevolvable kind of Pokemon. The The Kelly community had even created an adorable event for the little guys that was celebrated annually called the Little Green Men Days Festival. It's been on hold since the pandemic, but it was a great time with food, music, rides, games, and a costume contest. Hopefully one day they'll be able to put the event on again, but from what I've read, they were having it on the same weekend as another nearby town's festival for something different. And being such a small community, you really need as many people as possible ready to go, so maybe they can set it for another time of year? I don't know. But what do you think? Do you think the Suttons experienced a close encounter with extraterrestrials? Or could it have been misidentified owls? When was the first time you heard the phrase little green men? I think mine might have been on an episode of Looney Tunes. Did you ever have a chance to go to the Little Green Men Days festival? Let me know in the comments. I read them all for future video ideas and to see how many other people enjoy learning about spooky stuff like myself. If you want to see what I release in the future, consider subscribing, liking this video, clicking the bell, and sharing it with others. If you'd like to support me in other ways, maybe consider checking out my Patreon. Speaking of patrons, I'd like to give a big thank you to mine, including our VIP camper, Lex Pralius. Thanks, friend. You can also join the Wicked Encounters Discord. We have some fun conversations over there, talk about spooky things, share videos, and I love posting pictures of my puppy dogs. You should join, it's so great, and you should share any pictures of your pets as well. Well, with that, I'm Allie, this is Wicked Encounters, and I'll see you next time. Bye!